And our SEC Insider hit this morning is brought to you by Tito's Vodka. There's been plenty of that flowing down in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Mobile, among other towns and cities celebrating Mardi Gras. It's Fat Tuesday. Welcome in, welcome in. ESPN 105.9 The Zone, the Out of Bounds Show. Presented by Ace Bolt and Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. We welcome in our friend, NFL College Football Insider Mike Detillier, at Mike Detillier on Twitter, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. And Mike, have you been celebrating Mardi Gras?
Yeah, you better believe it. We've had a good time. And it's rolled up pretty early this morning, so it's a long day of parades and celebration. And Zulu has already started, and then we'll have Rex, and then the kiddies can go out there and catch all that stuff on them truck parades, which is over 100 floats and trucks and stuff. So, yeah, it started pretty early this morning.
I saw a picture of you and Bobby Hebert a week or so ago.
We were grand marshals at the Cruel Mad Hatters in Metairie, and that was last weekend. And so we had a great time, great ride in Metairie and Kenner, and it was fun. It was first year of the parade, and we're thrilled that they asked us to ride. And we had a lot of whoop-de-doo, let's tell you that way.
How many parades over the years have you ridden in? Been on a? I mean, is it literally dozens or hundreds the last 30 or so years?
It's dozens. So yeah. So it's just I've been to. I've ridden in quite a few. So it's been fun, but and it's a little different. Every parade's a little bit different. And so, you can come to the bayou here and do it, and also out in the city. So, it's, but like I say, it's all a little bit different. Every parade's a little bit different. And, when you make that turn, I was grand marshal out in the bayou area in the Houma part, and, you get on the parade. It was a big alligator float they put me on. And I would say the first mile and a half, it's 3 or 4 people deep, and we made a turn to get on West Main, and I'd always been told that's when you know it. You get on that street and you look, and it's like 25 people deep, and it's just that look. When you make that turn and see all those people, it's like, whoa. You're talking about, 500, 600,000 people for a parade.
Wow.
I mean, it's unbelievable to see that mass of people all screaming at you all at one time. So, it's a lot of fun. Just like, today, I would like to see how many people, in the city. The weather's been pretty good so far, and and everybody celebrates a little bit different. Some people in the quarter, some people on the parade route. Like I said, some people come on the bayou and catch some of the parades here. And so it's all a little different.
Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Miller Lite guest line. You're listening Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. So what's dominating the airwaves for you right now, Mike? Is it more Burrow and the combine and the fact that he is the man in the draft coming off the best season in the history of college football and the national championship? Or is it, Drew announced officially he's coming back and the Saints, this, that, and the other? What is it
I think
now?
it's a little bit of both. I think right now it's much more, Burrow and what happens there. And, again, Joe is people are going to find out. Excuse me. He's wired a little bit differently than most quarterbacks, and he sort of gives you answers that are dribs and drabs. He's not one to give you a long, drawn-out answer. That's just not the way he is. He's very focused on what he does. It's between the ears with him. I mean, he's got it. But he's not your typical guy if you were a politician, he'd be unique. Because he's not gonna give you a long story. And so when people tell me they got long interviews with Joe Burrow, I know they're lying. You never get that. I mean, you listen to him talk, he gives it to you in short, little drawn out sentences. And that's just the way he is, and he's a defensive player and playing an offensive position.
Oh, wow. I like that.
He's got that type of mentality. He really, really does. And that man, he is about as different a quarterback as you'll find from how he prepares mentally, his focus, his aggression, his intensity. It's like a defensive player. Really, really is. It's unique. You don't see that a lot in this league.
No.
And it's a lot of politically correct stuff. Well, he don't say anything politically correct. He's going to give it to you a little bit, but he ain't going into a drawn-out monologue on anything. Now, he tries to tap you for information. I found out a little bit about that because once Coach O told him, hey, we grew up together, he was like, hey, give me a story. I go, what you mean? He said, no, give me a story or two, because, sometimes O would get on him about certain things, and he don't pay attention. He's the son of a coach. You're going to get chewed out. And so he would always kind of try to tap me for stories about Ogeron. And I gave him one, and he threw it right back to him. And so I found out about it real quickly.
So
to not do that anymore.
Hey, Mike, did you see his? I thought it was hilarious. Did you see Joe Burrow's tweet on the small hands?
Yeah, I mean that's typical him. Listen, again, I would be willing to bet you a lot of money that there's no way if that would have happened to Tua, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Jacob Eason, any of them would have thought of that quickly. But that's Joe, and he's a very focused, but he likes to mess around too now. He walks that fine line, and he'll give it right back to you. But, again, he is not your typical NFL quarterback for certain things. And people fixing to find out real quick. And they found out a little bit yesterday when he made that comment.
That was so funny. Something to the extent of, well, my hands are small, I guess I'll retire, or something. It was just
he has
what a great sense of humor.
Chip on his shoulder as a player. And I told his dad that I can remember in a long time. Everybody's got, some motivation in life, one way or another. But he's got it and still carries it. No matter what he accomplishes, it's not good enough. And so you can see these sort of incidents when people make a big story about his hands or, the stuff about not playing in Cincinnati is a bunch of BS. He never said that. That's not what he is. He wouldn't say that, believe me. He's never going to say, I want to play somewhere, I don't want to play somewhere. He's going to give it to you where you're not real sure what he says. No, because I've been through it with him. So I do think when you look at it, bottom line is he is as fiery a competitor as you will find at that quarterback position. He's wired. He's hardwired.
I mean, is it kind of like Drew?
Drew is a lot more politically correct than what Joe is.
Gotcha.
A lot more. He'll give you an answer. With Joe, sometimes you're confused about the question. That you give him a question, and what he answers is not even close to what you ask. It's, he's a younger version, and only because he stayed living here afterwards. Hank Stram was like that. You asked Hank a question, and by the time he finished, you had forgot what you had asked him. No, King Henry was like that. I mean, he was he was a unique guy, and so is Joe. But Hank, you asked him a question, and by the time Hank finished, you didn't know exactly what you had asked him because his answer was nowhere close to what the question was. But that's how he tried to bring you to not answer. With Joe, he sort of is the same way. He sort of drives you down the trail, but it's much shorter, much shorter.
All right, let me ask you this, Mike. Mike Detillier, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Miller Lite guest line. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. You can watch the show right now on the Out of Bounds Sports YouTube channel. Please subscribe. So, Mike, there's only so we run into the same thing on our show. There's just only so much real estate. There's only so much oxygen in the room. There's only so many topics to cover. And for us right now, Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach are huge. And then we mix in some of the stuff going on with New Orleans and Dak, and that pretty much drives it. But with what y'all are going through right now, arguably the greatest time in the history of Louisiana sports, you got the Saints operating at a ridiculous level for years now, and you got Drew. All you have to do is say Drew or Sean. And then all of a sudden you follow that up with this out of left field 15-0 Ogeron, Joe Burrow, Joe Brady, Aranda Magic. Does that leave any oxygen in the room for this transcendent talent by the name of Zion Williamson, Mike?
Leaves a lot, and there's a lot of talk about Zion, only because they're winning, and he's everything built, okay, because he came in, as a high school kid into college, you knew you had something special. The one thing I didn't know was how well this would translate is his ability to offensive rebound, which you saw last year in college. His first shot misses, he goes right back and get it and puts it back in. I didn't know if he could do that against grown men. Okay, that's the NBA. You got grown men here, and he's been able to do it. It's remarkable to watch. People talk about his weight and how his shape and everything else. Okay, everybody's built different. Okay, they got people today that want to tell you, if Babe Ruth would have took better care of himself, he'd hit more home runs. Okay, I get it. But that's just the way his build was. It was Barkley was differently built than a lot of different people. So with Zion, he is always going to sort of look this way. They're never going to, say thin around him, but he can play. And it's unbelievable how quickly his talent has adapted to the NBA. That, hey, listen, I got this. Don't worry about it. I got it. There aren't a lot of people that walk into a league of grown men and basically can still do what they did as high school kids and as a college player. He has. But the biggest surprise for me with Zion is, and I didn't know it, and no one else knew until he got here, his ability to go up and get an offensive rebound. And time again, he does it. He finds a space. He knows how to block out. He knows how to get to a secondary shot. He misses a shot. He goes right back up and get it. Man, you're doing this at a pretty high level against big-time players and older players that have seen all this talent before. And yet he's been able to do it. So, man, he's impressive. And they're winning. They got a young basketball team. We'll see how well they can finish.
Right.
The only thing, I remember this. Butch Van Redikoff would always, when he was here and then he coached in college afterwards, and Butch would always talk about how young players, how they make it through a season. Because his deal was always, okay, in college, look how many games you're playing. 25, 30 games, whatever. In the NBA, look how many games you're playing. There comes to a point where you hit the wall. And so you got to be careful how you use a group of young players who aren't used to playing this extended season and the travel and everything else. I'm interested with the Pelicans, and they've really pieced it together pretty well. And they've been on a pretty hot team, and then tonight they play the Lakers, so we'll find out a little bit more about that. And they had them by the teriyaki here in New Orleans. They let them off the hook late, but they had them. They had them caught. And then Anthony Davis got hot late. Is how well this team plays late with a lot of young pieces that haven't played all these games. Again with Zion and Hayes and some of the other guys, and how well this mixes. Because right now, they're one of the hottest teams in the NBA, and all of that revolves around Zion. No matter what they want to talk about, well, we don't want to have all that pressure on him. Man, he don't care about that. He just goes out and play. And when you got other talents like Brandon Ingram on that team, and Brandon he can shoot it too. And Lonzo Ball has really progressed as a player, especially deep ball. Josh Hart also has really played well. So, there's a lot of room for talk for Zion because he is he was built to be and built up to be, but he's even better than I thought he would be early on. And that's really saying something because I thought he was a really good player.
Sure.
But man, to watch him play, and he does it with ease. And that's what great players do. You watch a great player, and they do it, it's almost with ease. No training camp. He's rehabbing the knee and everything else, and he comes in here, and he takes over the league. It's amazing of how well he's played so far, and he's just scratched the surface of what he can do as a professional player. That's scary if you're in the NBA.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it'll look like 2 or 3 years from now. Mike Detillier on Mardi Gras, Burrow, and Zion Williamson right here on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Mike, have a great week. We'll recap the Combine next Tuesday. Thank you, bud.
We'll do it. Thanks a lot.
Mike Detillier, at Mike Detillier on Twitter, one of our best guests, one of the best moves we made 10 years ago, to have Mike on just about every Tuesday throughout the year to give us Saints, LSU, NFL draft perspective. Welcome in. We're live in the Bank Plus studio, the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road and Drago's Seafood Restaurant and Oyster Bar right across the street on County Line Road, and the Hilton Jackson on County Line Road. Full-service Hilton, over 30,000 square feet that you can rent for business or social events. Bo and Blake with you. Hope you're doing well. I want to segue here on one of the big topics today, stories coming out of the SEC. If you're just now joining us, and that is the most successful duo in the history of college football are no longer. Nick Saban and Scott Cochran are done. And this article on AL.com by Joseph Goodman is really, really good. The title of the article is Kirby Smart Stealing Scott Cochran, an SEC Act of War. But what really jumped out at me is the fact that the writer questions how in the world Saban allowed this to happen. And he says, what a strange way for Saban to lose his most loyal lieutenant. Listen to this. To do it during Cochran's fourth quarter program, which is in the second week of a 4-week-long fourth quarter program at Alabama, arguably the most important part of the year for your football team. This is where leaders emerge, not in August camp, Not in September. By September, it's too late. This is where the boys, this is where the men, this is where the guys emerge as leaders. And he says, winter workouts are when teams are made in college football. Players suffer together, forge bonds. Accountability is taught, and leaders emerge. It does not happen during the season. Listen to this. Running back with the Oakland Raiders, Josh Jacobs, called Cochran the team's glue. But this is really what jumped out at me, y'all, as far as Alabama, what's next, plateauing, and holes in the dam. Listen to this. Beyond that, Cochran was the person in the program who players relied upon when they had problems or concerns. He also had the seniority to address things with Saban on behalf of the players. How did Nick Saban lose Scott Cochran to Kirby Smart? Saban told ESPN that Cochran wanted to be an on-the-field coach at Alabama. And Saban didn't think he was ready. As smart, bright, and brilliant as Nick Saban is, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I don't mean to be mean, but these aren't a bunch of rocket scientists at wide receiver, linebacker, safety, running backs coaches. I don't think of the sharpest tools in the shed when I think of all these SEC assistants. Now, some of the coordinators, absolutely. Some of the coordinators, no question.
Yeah,
I don't believe you have to be – all these guys know football. Now, can all of them coach? No. A lot of high school football coaches can't coach.
I was about to say there's plenty of people
They played high school football.
There's plenty of people already on the Alabama coaching staff roster that can't coach.
Right. He hired Tosh LaPoy. He had no business being a defensive coordinator at the University of Alabama. He hired Mike Loxley. He had no business being an offensive coordinator at the University of Alabama.
Crime Dog McGriff made $5 million as a DC.
Thank you. So we don't walk around with all these position coaches and go, oh, wow. Some of them are sharp, but some of them are just, football coaches. That blows me away that Saban said that to ESPN. Cochran wanted to be an on-the-field coach. I don't mean to be mean. You don't need to have the NASA, handbook memorized to be the safeties, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends coach. I don't care if it's at Alabama or West Georgia. You know what that tells? Saban was so fixated on Cochran is my strength and conditioning coach. And Cochran was so good at it that even though Saban has adapted and evolved, maybe more than any other college coach, that he could not bring himself to step back and go, I'm going to elevate Scott to a position coach in which I lose 5 to 6 assistants every year. Kirby Smart with the biggest free agent, maybe, recruit in SEC football this year.